Well, good evening. I will be giving a presentation tonight talking a little bit about a project we have coming up this year called BR22A1, which is a project on 32nd Avenue South from 22nd Street to 32nd Street. So just a brief agenda for tonight, do some staff introductions and then talk about the project, just the location, the description of the work that we'll be doing, some finer details, talk about the phasing and timing and durations of the work, how we'll communicate throughout the project, and then the cost and funding, talk a little bit about special assessments, and then we'll have an opportunity to answer some questions. So with that, we have a few of us from the city of Fargo here tonight. Our project manager, Eric Hodgson, is here. Doug Durgan with our special assessments. He'll be able to answer any special assessment questions you guys might have. And then myself, Tom Knockmus, I'm the assistant city engineer for the city. We might also have Josh Olson with Apex Engineering join us. The city of Fargo hired Apex Engineering to do the project design for 32nd Avenue, and then they'll also be doing the construction oversight. So like we talked about, going from 32nd Street to 22nd Street on 32nd Avenue in 2 years time, in 2024, we'll be going further east from 22nd Street up to University. So of course we have a lot of important businesses and a couple hospitals and clinics in this area. So really what we're doing is a full roadway reconstruction. And when we say that, there's a lot of other things that go along with it. So we'll be doing water main, water services. We'll be lining the sanitary sewer main and replacing sewer services. We'll be adding an additional storm sewer line and then making adjustments to inlets and some of those types of secondary systems. And then we'll just be in general improving the roadway and intersections, working on some pedestrian infrastructure, and then replacing traffic signals, street lights, pavement markings, and landscaping throughout the project. So just some details about the project. Pedestrian access will be maintained to all businesses along 32nd Avenue, or in some cases we might have to provide an alternative access. For any properties that are impacted by our water main replacement, we will provide temporary water service. We will have to reduce the number of traffic lanes going through 32nd Avenue and at some of the intersections as we go forward in the project, just because we do have a fairly constrained right-of-way. We will be replacing the asbestos cement water main with PVC. Again, we'll be increasing the storm sewer capacity by adding a secondary line, and then we'll be rehabilitating the storm sewer by lining. We'll be upgrading pedestrian crossings and bringing them up to current ADA standards and be replacing certain segments of old sidewalk with new. And then we'll be increasing some green space in an effort to try to maintain some of the trees along the corridor, and then also kind of create a more pedestrian friendly environment, be creating some wider boulevards and having some median planters throughout the corridor. So ultimately planting 37 new trees and replanting 8 trees. So we'll, similar to many arterial projects that we do like this, we'll be having a number of different phases. So phase 1 is really the underground utilities in the center of the road. And then there will be some impacts with some of the secondary streets along the corridor. And then once that gets done, we can open that up, and then we'll close down, move on to phase 2, where we'll work on the south half of the road. Once that work is done, we'll flip traffic again. We'll go work on the north half of the road in phase 3. Once that work is done, we'll then go back to the center of the roadway where we'll put in some of those medians and planting medians, things like that, work on pavement markings and some incidentals throughout the corridor. So here's maybe just kind of a rough potential timeline for the project. We do have durations, limitations in our contract. So phase 1, where we're working in that center, it's 50 days is what the contractor will have. So, potential timeline, if they start up mid-April, probably that first week in June, they'd be done. Then they'd be going to the south half of the road, where they'll have 60 days. And so, again, that could be early June to early August. Then they'd flip to the north half. They'd have 74 days to do that work. And again, that duration is longer because they have just more work to do on that side of the roadway. That could be from, early August to that mid to late part of of October. And then they go to phase 4, which is again that center. They'd have 20 days, and that could be, mid-October to early November. We do, however, have incentive on this project. Our city commission approved an incentive where the contractor can be paid $10,000 per day for every day they complete work in advance of that 204-day duration. So there's a maximum incentive of $500,000. So for the contractor to get that full incentive, they'd have to have the roadway open by September 18th. So our timeline, we kind of talked a little bit about this, but we're bidding this project through the North Dakota DOT next Friday. Start date, we don't know for sure. Again, we just recently showed that potential timeline, but it's all weather dependent on when they start. But they do have to have it complete currently by early part of November. But hopefully with that incentive, we can get it done sooner than that. And then there will be some minor things that continue to happen, probably into early December. Communication, we post a lot to Fargo Streets and through Twitter and Facebook to keep our public open. Along this project, though, the contractor will have to provide a public relations coordinator, and that individual will work directly with the property owners and businesses that are affected by the work that we're doing. And then we've also hired Flint Group to be involved in the project. And they do a really good job at helping keep the public aware of what's going on. They do a lot of great messaging that way. So we'll be using them on this project as well. Project costs, we currently estimate the cost of construction at about $11.5 million. And then we do have some fees and contingency that we include into that. And so all in all, the total cost with fees and contingency is about $16 million. And then the project funding, about 50% of that comes from special assessments, and we'll talk a little bit about how that's broken down and made up. And then the other half comes from various funds. So we have about $5.5 million in federal funds, just short of $1 million in infrastructure sales tax. Likewise with wastewater utility funds, and then about $750,000 in water utility funds. So how do we get to that special assessment number? So for most of these things, we use a capped cost. And some of these things, we didn't quite get the cap. So water main would typically have a $40 a front foot cap to those benefiting properties. In this one, it's at a just over $11 per front foot. Sanitary sewer is at about $7.50. Storm sewer is being assessed at $10 cents per square foot. No assessment for streetlights, and then paving gets to be a little bit more complicated. So there's kind of a few different tiers. We really, for an arterial, we have a direct cost, and then we have an indirect cost. So the indirect cost would be a homeowner, say a half a mile north of 32nd Avenue, where a direct benefit would be a commercial property immediately adjacent to 32nd Avenue. So as you can see, that indirect versus direct cost is very different. And then we have different categories too. So a single family property pays a lesser amount than a commercial property for that assessment. And so like I just talked about, overall, there's a direct benefit that's established for special assessments, and then there's an indirect benefit. And that's where we go wider, north and south. And then we do go a little bit further west of 32nd Street. And that's for the storm sewer drainage improvements that we're doing. And with all that, we're done with the presentation. We have contact information here if you have any design or project questions, and then likewise for the special assessment questions. And we'll just kind of take it offline at this point and answer any questions anyone might have.